Hi guys, Michael Abayomi here. So everyone's favorite The Lord of the Rings TV show is back, as we got the first 3 episodes of season 2 of The Rings of Power debut on Amazon Prime Video, marking what is clearly a triumphant return. And in case you can't tell, I'm being a bit facetious right now. But regardless of what you think about the show, it is fair to say that it has a share of detractors and fans, and I think I kind of fall somewhere in between, because there are definitely things to enjoy about the show, as well as a lot of shortcomings that are preventing it from achieving true greatness. So in this video, I'm going to share my thoughts on the overall show thus far, as well as the first 3 episodes I just dropped, and needless to say, I'm going to be discussing some of it in full spoiler details. So consider this a spoiler warning if you haven't seen the show or the new episodes. So the last time I actually spoke about the Rings of Power was all the way back in 2022, shortly after the show had just debuted alongside House of the Dragon. And back then, I remember that I was a bit more lenient with my overall views on the show, because it was still trying to get off the ground, and one of the things I remember that really stuck out to me then was its deliberate pacing, because compared to House of the Dragon then, which had a lot of things moving forward all at once with multiple time jumps within the first season, this one had a much more slower deliberate pacing that was more in line with what we got in the books, and I felt that it was okay for the show provided that it eventually built up towards a meaningful climax. But as the show went on, my patience started to wear thin, as it was very clear that the show was simply lacking in substance, and this was most evident in its writing and overall characterization, because it just had characters that were, first of all, unlike anything we had already grown to know about these characters from the movies or even the books, as well as the fact that the characters just tended to act in very unlikable ways. And a prime example of this is of course Galadriel, which was a character that I grew to despise by the end of the season. Most of this was down to how insufferable she tended to be, which was a stark contrast from how she was presented in the Peter Jackson movies. And of course, we all know that most of this was due to the fact that she was basically adhering to the modern Hollywood trope of girl bosses. But I still hold fast to the belief that you can present your character as a girl boss, and at the same time still take the time to humanize the character and give the character some redeeming qualities, which was something that I just failed to do with Galadriel, and which was why it was always frustrating having the entire show anchored around her. And when you now couple this together with the pacing of the show and how tedious everything felt, the whole thing quickly started to become borderline unwatchable. And it was around episode 5 that I almost came close to tapping out of the show completely. But everything was saved by episode 6, which was one of the best episodes of the season overall and of the show so far. Because even if you factor in the first 3 episodes of season 2, nothing has come close to matching the thrills of that particular episode. And I'm beginning to think that that might just be as good as it gets. But if the trailers for season 2 are anything to go by, it will appear that it is also going to have its fair share of thrills, as we can see clearly that there's going to be a lot of battles to come in the forthcoming episodes. But my problem with this show once again is the fact that yes, even if you have all the battles in the world, you have all the spectacle and all the best production and special effects, none of that really means anything or amounts to anything if you don't care about the actual characters involved in those battles, which is just where the show has been failing so far. So my primary hope for season 2 going forward is that we finally start to get some meaningful character development from the various characters. It's high time that a character like Galadriel starts to realize the error of her ways and starts to become more in line with what we have come to know about this character from the books and the movies. Because right now there's this huge dichotomy between the Galadriel from the books and the Galadriel that is being presented here, and it's high time that we actually see the 2 versions of this character start to coalesce into one. The same thing goes for Elrond, who has been depicted as rather effeminate and sensitive, which is unlike the warrior that we got to know in the Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson movies. So it is high time that we also start seeing that version of him start to come out, which I have to admit that from the first 3 episodes we can already start seeing him moving towards that direction, but it remains to be seen if he's going to get to that destination anytime soon. And to be honest, judging by these first 3 episodes, I will have to say that season 2 of The Rings of Power is pretty much shaping up to be more of the same, I mean, the writing definitely hasn't improved in any meaningful way, judging by what we've seen thus far, because there were so many examples I can pull from where I just had to wonder if the series was written by the same writers from Teletubbies, because some of these things just don't make sense. I'll give you an example. Like in episode 1 of season 2, we have Elrond running away with the 3 rings of power that had been forged thus far, and he eventually goes to seek counsel with one of his old mentors, which by the way was a character that was never introduced in season 1 and had not been properly established. In any case, he ends up confiding in him about his fears about the corrupting nature of the rings and why he feels the elves shouldn't be allowed to keep them. And this man, this elf, this Surdin or whatever his name is, eventually decides to help him destroy the rings by casting it into the depths of a nearby river. But of course, while he's on the way there, the corrupting power of the rings eventually persuades him not to do so. And later on, we now have a scene where he suddenly appears wearing one of the rings and presenting the remaining 2 rings to Gil-galad. And even though Galadriel at this point had already done more than enough to be thrown in a nearby prison cell, one of the rings falls down and miraculously rolls towards her feet, and she just picks it up and puts it on, and everybody just accepts that she's now one of the ring bearers for whatever reason. So this is just a prime example of what I have to consider very poor storytelling. Like, the writing just didn't do enough of a proper job of setting up her becoming one of the ring bearers. So the whole thing just felt messy and like it wasn't properly written, like something that you see in a first draft, not something that you expect in a final draft that will actually get filmed. And we've just been getting a lot of examples like this throughout the season thus far, and I'm beginning to fear that we might not actually get any tangible improvements this season. But as always, I'll try and remain as optimistic as I can, because like I keep saying, even though there are all these shortcomings of the show, there are still things that redeem it at the end of the day, which was why the show was able to sneak its way into my top 10 TV shows for 2022 back then. So I'm actually equally optimistic that season 2 would be able to turn around and eventually starts to hit its stride like the way we're all hoping it's going to. Anyway, these are just my thoughts about the Rings of Power and the first 3 episodes of season 2 specifically. What do you think about the show thus far? Are you enjoying what you are seeing, or is it falling below your expectations? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed watching this discussion, and to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on if you like to see more discussions like this in the future. And until the next one, this is Michael, signing off.